now joined from Cairo by the political science professor, Dr. Haitham Omran. Thank you very much for being here with us on Qnews. So what could be the outcomes of Prime Minister Madbouly's visit to Lebanon, especially in energy and infrastructure?
To you and to the viewers, of course, this visit resulted in different fruits regarding strengthening cooperation in the fields of energy and infrastructure through expanded discussions between the Egyptian Prime Minister and his Lebanese counterpart, stressing the Egyptian readiness to expand cooperation in vital fields including renewable energy, petroleum, oil and natural gas, in addition to the reconstruction projects, and this was not only confined to political statements, but there were also affirmation on the practical intentions to cooperate in these vital fields. The second aspect to this visit is focusing on the renewable energy sector and optimizing the electricity sector, as the Prime Minister of Egypt indicated that we can exchange expertise in the field of energy, which will be very helpful to Lebanon. Also highlighted the Egyptian companies being able to provide assistance in this regard, and this is going to be very important, especially with the challenges that we see in the electricity in Lebanon, and maybe Lebanon relies on the oil exports, and they have a lot of difficulties in this sector. The third aspect of this visit is supporting institutions economically and the economic linkage, as the Egyptian Prime Minister stressed supporting the Lebanese economy through the trade exchange and minimizing the obstacles before the Egyptian companies operating in the fields of energy and infrastructure, in addition to establishing connections and links to facilitate the entry of services and supplies, which will develop the sector in Lebanon. The fourth aspect is that this visit focused on economic cooperation, and most prominent sectors were energy and infrastructure, but the statements by Prime Minister Madbouly included supporting the Lebanese stability and the Egyptian supported to stopping any kind of escalation to push the development march forward, and this is a very evident stance towards any kind of escalation and respecting any international resolution in this regard, supporting the security and stability of Lebanon, which is a very important factor for the success of the energy projects and the economic projects that will actually turn into a reality.
And Dr. Omran, how could this Lebanese-Egyptian High Joint Committee be activated quickly to move projects from agreements to execution?
Activating the High Joint Committee rapidly requires moving from the policies to execution mechanisms through practical measures, including turning to the executive committee instead of the expanded meetings, and it's very necessary to form task forces inside of this committee to be concerned with certain files such as oil, gas, infrastructure, energy and reconstruction, and these task forces will have the mandates to take unilateral and individual decisions. Secondly, defining projects within certain time frames to start the short-term and medium-term projects with a high economic feasibility that do not require a lot of legislation complications, and these projects, the solar projects, for instances, or operating the electricity network plants, are highly essential. Also linking this committee to the financing parties, there must be financial resources either linked to the government or private sector, or regional funding, in addition to taking advantage of the Egyptian expertise from the Egyptian companies that have operated in different similar projects, which will minimize the economic burden on the Lebanese state, also setting a time frame, a timetable that is binding and announced that any project that is pinned to this committee has a certain time frame that is announced with phases and periodic reporting, also providing the political cover to this regional expertise, as these cross-border projects require direct follow-up from the political leadership, defining and putting away any political issues and focusing on the economic cooperation to support the economies of both countries.
Well, of course, as well, we have cross-border tensions still ongoing. How could Cairo and Beirut coordinate to reinforce the ceasefire under Resolution 1701 and prevent any escalation?
The Beirut-Cairo coordination, in accordance with the Resolution 1701, is based on a multi-level approach, combining the political level and the economic level, as well as the institutional support, and this is based on diplomatic coordination with different guarantors, and Egypt plays an integral role through continuation with the United States and France and the United Nations as the guarantors of 1701 resolution and its execution, and taking any breaches to be documented in an international framework to prevent any further breaches is very essential at this point. Also supporting the Lebanese institutions legitimately. Cairo has always stressed that we support Beirut and the government as the executive force to carry out any resolutions south the Litani River, and to avoid any measures that would actually escalate the situation further. Also activating the indirect diplomacy channels, which is the quiet diplomacy. Also coordinating between the relevant parties, in addition to contributing to any field action before it turns into a full-scale confrontation, especially with the ongoing tensions. The fourth dimension is linking the de-escalation to the current vision for reconstruction. The Egyptian vision is not isolated from the perimeter of Lebanon, so keeping the ceasefire requires a broader addressing to the aspects of the field. Also neutralizing Lebanon, as Cairo is working with Beirut not to make Beirut a field of confrontation and a way of any breaches to the ceasefire, which will reflect negatively on the economy.
And beyond just government agreements, are there mechanisms that might help mobilize Egyptian private sector investment into Lebanese industry, transport, utilities?
Of course, to attract the Egyptian investments in Lebanon, this requires moving from the general calls to incentivizing packages through initiatives, including providing assurances to the investors, especially from the private sector, with low risks. And that's why the Lebanese state must provide these sovereign guarantees to the mega projects in energy and infrastructure, and also taking advantage of the Arab and international investment instruments to minimize the risks. Second, also flexibility, encouraging the Egyptian private sector is based on a private public partnership, which will uh, also the contracts to minimize the executive risks. The third dimension is represented in an entry package to the Egyptian investment, overcoming all bureaucratic obstacles through a one window, a one-stop shop for the Egyptian investors in Lebanon, in addition to accelerating the measures of privatization and giving exemptions or reductions on the taxes for the vital projects. Also, the engagement of banks and financial institutions, and facilitating the work of Egyptian financial institutions in Lebanon, providing sovereign assurances, and also working with regional financial institutions to reduce the cost of funding, also providing this political and protection for the investments, which requires a stability in addition to defining the economic projects and keeping them away from any political tensions, and the Lebanese commitment to these projects. So attracting the private sector to Lebanon is not going to be implemented through any slogans, but by providing the due requirements and assurances, and once they are available, the Egyptian investment will be part of the solution to the Lebanese current difficulty, and it will not be just an initiative.
Well, great to have your thoughts this afternoon. Dr. Haitham Omran, political science professor, joining us from Cairo. Thank you very much.